Brother wants to bring his manipulative best friend to my wedding instead of his girlfriend, followed by a shocking accident. My brother, 29, has been with Leah for around 2 years. We all like her, she is quite nice. I'm getting married next April and have sent an invitation to my brother's apartment. We opted to extend invitations to homes rather than individuals. For example, our aunt received an invitation for her family, not for each individual. Last Thursday, we met at my parents' home. Due to tax considerations, there was only the core family, lol. While there, I asked my brother about Leah's dietary limitations. I know she is a vegetarian for health reasons and cannot consume some fresh vegetables. He stated she wasn't coming and that he'd be taking his girl best friend Amanda instead. Their relationship is now weird AF. Amanda, in my perspective, has always manipulated my brother. He continually denies having affections for her, but let us be honest here. Amanda would date other guys, blow off my brother, and then fall back in love with him when things were going bad with her prior relationships. Her previous boyfriend ended their relationship about the time my brother, his then girlfriend Amanda, and her ex were going to fly to Spain. What did my idiotic brother do? He went with Amanda alone because she was uncomfortable with his ex-girlfriend. Clearly he was caught off guard when his partner ended their relationship. I didn't say anything else because it was all so strange. So when he said that, I asked whether Leah had any other commitments, but my brother said Amanda had requested if she could come because it would be a chance to finally see the old gang. We were in the same friend group in high school. I told him I would have invited Amanda if I wanted her to go. Amanda is harsh and cold. She consistently makes derogatory remarks about other girls at every gathering. Around an hour in, she will create a commotion, either rushing away crying or sitting angry at a table, telling everyone to leave her alone before making a cryptic comment about something hurting her. I informed my brother that I was revoking his +1 and that Amanda would not be attending our wedding. He accused me of misogyny and bigotry because I don't understand opposite-sex friendships, which is ridiculous. My spouse refers to a female childhood friend as his best woman. I adore her too, she has been fantastic. She respects and always involves me. When I started seeing my fiancé, she made a concerted attempt to include me in the friend group. Anyway, I declared my decision definitive. He could take it or leave it, but I would invite Leah personally since I like her. He yelled at me, telling me to stay out of his business. I told him to get rid of his strange feelings for Amanda. He's upset with me. My father stated that wasn't our business, but my mother is upset with my brother. Edit. To answer a few questions, the invitation was addressed to the Smiths. Surprisingly, Leah shares the same last name as us. Granted, we have one of the most prevalent surnames. Yes, they live together. The tax issue is minor. My parents own a little business but are terrible at keeping track of all their receipts, so we go and help them every month. We digitize the receipts and enter them into bookkeeping software for the accountant. Update 1, I listen to *2 hot takes* on my commute every day, so your response to my message came as a big surprise. Thank you for your insight. Regarding the invitation, I now know I should not have stated it as inviting just one individual. I figured inviting households would be cute and less stressful for guests. Lesson learned LOL. I have an update to share. After the altercation, I did not hear from Leah or my brother for approximately 2 days. During that time, Amanda contacted me, angered by my Reddit post. She called me an expletive, and claimed that Leah isn't the only special woman in my brother's world. She insisted that neither Leah nor I had the right to be greedy with my brother's time, claiming that she existed before Leah or any of his lovers and would outlive them all. She concluded with the pompous assertion that she would undoubtedly see me at my wedding. I was fuming. I elected not to respond to her other insults, instead sending her a clear message. Hello Amanda. You are not welcome to my wedding. If you want to see the old crew, please set up a coffee date while they are all in town. If you attend the wedding, you will be escorted out amicably by staff or with police assistance. Please avoid contacting either myself or my husband. Amanda responded with more emails, primarily vague threats and name-calling, and used Instagram to indirectly target me. She tagged me in postings, making my username small so that people wouldn't know I was tagged but would see it in their alerts. She also utilized a Ask Me Anything sticker on her Instagram story, and I believe she asked herself leading questions. Highlights included inquiries like, "What's the perfect outfit for a wedding?" with a photo of herself in a frock captioned, "This, but sadly, I'll never get to use it." Another question was, "What is your pet peeve?" followed by a diatribe on nosy people who believe they have the authority to regulate others. She inundated her story with depressing phrases about no longer having a girl's girl, tagging me in each one. Of course, I screenshotted them all. LOL. When Amanda began spreading a false tale, stating that I initially invited her but later disinvited her because Leah despises her and persuaded my brother to do the same, some people contacted me. The coolest part? No one believed her. Many of our former high school buddies have cut ties with Amanda, and the few guys who still talk to her have a stronger connection to my brother. They came out to inform me that Amanda was spreading misinformation. The girls in the group blocked her when she vented to them, prompting Amanda to blitz their phones. My brother worried, believing I had launched a campaign against her. Speaking of my brother, he called and contacted me several times, enraged that I had excluded Amanda and even blamed me for any harm she may have suffered. He also called our mother, claiming Amanda was despondent and threatening to never forgive me if anything happened to her. My mother encouraged him to call for a welfare check if he was truly concerned, because he, as an untrained individual, would be unprepared to manage such circumstances. The most significant development is that my brother was booted out of his shared residence. Leah contacted to suggest their relationship might not last and that she might not feel comfortable attending the wedding. I understood her decision and listened attentively. We met for coffee and she described their nasty dispute. Leah didn't mince words when it came to discussing the details. She made my brother read every communication between him and Amanda aloud and even sent a copy to one of her male friends, who responded, "Leah, WTF, this is not okay." She used this to demonstrate that their interactions were, at best, improper and, realistically, an emotional affair. When my brother urged her to stay, she questioned why, knowing that he would always choose Amanda. He said he wouldn't, but his quick reaction to Amanda's panicked phone about my bullying her demonstrated otherwise. Leah left, as he consoled Amanda in another room. Later, she texted him that he needed to get out while she was gone. It was her apartment, and she didn't want to see him until certain criteria were satisfied, including fully cutting Amanda out and seeking therapy to address his harmful tendencies. The fight lasted 2 grueling days. Leah found solace in your show in the comments section. She characterized it as both weird and useful. She extends her greetings and wants individuals in similar situations to know a few things. Don't be afraid to be alone because being with someone who isn't right for you will make you feel even more lonely than being single. Never enter a relationship with a fixer mentality, as it frequently leads to heartbreak. Prioritize yourself, and while attempting to work things out is admirable, do not rely on it as the solution. That is pretty much all. It sounds complex, like a soap opera, but my daily life has been very quiet. I believe my brother needs to mature and either commit to Amanda or recognize that he is being played. Amanda, please grow up and leave me alone. We received a call last night. My brother was involved in an automobile accident while abroad. My father and I are on our way there. Getting plane tickets was nearly tough, so we've been driving since 5 a.m. He went on vacation with Amanda to clear their heads. Amanda did not even call us. I'm not sure if she's still with my brother or if she is also harmed. My brother's phone got destroyed, therefore he is unable to update us. The nurse, bless her soul, has kept us updated. He can't even speak to us. I believe I'm simply writing because I don't know what else to do. My father does not want to talk. I'm not sure if he's upset, worried or both. I had never seen him with this expression. My brother is an idiot who has harmed many people because he is selfish, but I still do not want him to die. He's my brother. Thank goodness he is alive. Amanda isn't here. This week has been utterly dreadful. My brother is alive, but he is not doing well. We're quite concerned about the insurance situation. He and Amanda traveled to a place outside of the European Union, and he, of course, did not obtain travel insurance. We must now pay in advance and hope that his insurance would reimburse us, but we all know how that works. If they owe you money, you may not receive it for 8 to 18 business months. My mom and Leah are also trying to figure it out. Amanda visited the hospital yesterday. She hadn't fled, she simply needed to go to the police because of the vehicle accident. My brother is in the hospital due to sepsis, not the crash. A UTI developed into a kidney infection, which progressed to sepsis. They decided to go on vacation to let off steam. Around 4 days in, my brother began to feel warm and ill. Amanda said she offered to drive him to the ER, but he rejected. I am not sure if she is telling the truth, but this is the first time I have seen her be sincere. They went out drinking, and when they got home, he took medication to relieve the discomfort. Amanda couldn't tell me what it was, but she was concerned since you shouldn't mix medication and alcohol. They began arguing, and my brother passed out. I'm not sure why she didn't call an ambulance. She couldn't explain it to me either. But when my brother awoke, Mom loaded him into the car. Amanda claimed she panicked and crashed into a barrier as they approached the hospital. That is when my brother's phone, which he was holding, flew out the window. Amanda opted to rush into the clinic to get someone and stayed with the car until the cops arrived. They refused to let her in because she was not a member of the family. Instead of phoning us right away, she returned to their Airbnb and explained that she just wanted some time to comprehend things. She had to go to the police, pay for the damage, and then visit my brother. But here's when it becomes frustrating. Amanda decided she needed to clear her mind, so she left my brother in the hospital alone for a day. She checked into a neighboring hotel to recuperate. She didn't tell any of us where she was until she arrived at the hospital yesterday, appearing calm and as if everything was under control. When we questioned her about leaving my brother alone, she explained, "I simply needed some time to get myself together. It has been overwhelming." Meanwhile, my brother was lying in a hospital bed in a faraway nation, unable to reach us because his phone had been destroyed in the incident. We are now attempting to manage the complexities of getting him home and ensuring he receives the medical treatment he requires. Amanda, on the other hand, seemed to be more concerned about the impact of the circumstance on her mental health. She even shared a selfie from her hotel room with the remark, "Taking a much-needed break." It's been a nightmare, and Amanda's behavior, although not particularly malevolent, has contributed to the stress. We are doing everything we can to support my brother. My brother, on the other hand, is struggling both physically and mentally. He is concerned about the growing medical expenditures, his recuperation, and the strain this scenario has placed on our family. Furthermore, he fears Amanda is losing interest in him, which heightens his uneasiness. That's why we're being kind to Amanda, to prevent adding to my brother's worry. We're concentrating on getting him the finest care possible and getting him home safely. I couldn't give them grandchildren, so my parents convinced my husband to leave me. They were shocked when I had a baby girl 3 years later. So, I, 30F, recently ran into my parents and ex-husband Scott, 33M, and I'm not sure how I feel about the encounter. For reference, my parents and I have not spoken in almost 3 years, and neither has my ex-husband. We split 3 years ago and have not communicated since then. In fact, I've done all in my power to avoid seeing them again because they devastated my life and mental health while I was still with them, to the point that I felt like I didn't deserve to exist. After my divorce, I went to the suburbs and sought to create a different life for myself, away from everyone and everything associated with my past. So running into them recently was a great surprise for me, and I said some things to them that I'm not sure were the best move for me. My parents had always desired a boy. It's not that they mistreated me growing up, but it was clear to me that they would have treated me differently if I had been a boy. My mother had even mentioned it on multiple occasions, and I had tried my hardest to be the son they never had, but I was unable to achieve. After graduating from college and moving out, I tried to stay in touch with my parents because, no matter what, they were still my family and the only family I had. I wasn't really close to my grandparents, and I didn't have any uncles or aunts who would look after me. So I accepted my fate. No matter how much they pushed me away, they were still my sole family, and even if they did not appear to be interested in staying in touch with me, I attempted to retain contact. When I was about 23 years old, I began dating Scott. We met at a concert and had an instant connection. After 6 months of dating, I introduced him to my parents, and they began to make more of an attempt to communicate with me. They would call me more frequently, inquire about my relationship, and generally show more interest in my life. I had noticed the difference, but because it was welcome, I didn't give it much thought and simply accepted it. The longer I dated Scott, the more involved my parents were in my life. At one point, it seemed like we were all one big happy family. I was overjoyed since it was everything I had ever desired, so I didn't question it, even though I should have. After a little more than 2 years of dating, we became engaged and married after 3 years together. After we married, things were going well for a time, and I was enjoying my life as a newlywed. However, 6 months after my wedding, my parents began hinting that they wanted a grandchild. I was only 26 at the time, and I wasn't quite prepared. I wanted to wait a few more years before trying for a kid, but at their suggestion, I spoke with Scott, who was all for the notion of establishing a family. Because of his eagerness, we decided to begin trying for a baby immediately after our wedding. We tried for a long time, but after several months, we were still unable to conceive. We began to suspect that anything was wrong and opted to be tested. Unfortunately, I found out that I was infertile. It was a great shock for both of us, but my parents were even more disappointed, and they didn't even try to hide it. My father went away instead of comforting me when we told both of our parents. We decided to stop trying for a while, and Scott and I spoke about attempting other methods, such as IVF. However, this would be extremely costly, and success on our first effort was not certain. So we had to postpone our plans to raise a family until we had saved enough money to cover multiple rounds of IVF. We were satisfied with that, despite our initial disappointment. However, my parents were really dissatisfied. They stopped visiting and talking to me, and no matter how much I tried to explain that this wasn't all my fault, they weren't ready to listen. After a few weeks, I was so disappointed by their actions that I called them and vented. I told them they had been treating me unfairly since I couldn't give them a grandchild right now, which made me wonder if they were really capable of being decent grandparents when I did have a child. I informed them that they had always treated me cruelly because I was not a boy, and I saw how differently they treated my spouse. For a long time, I attempted to ignore it and keep our friendship going, but now I'm not interested in keeping in touch with them and would rather that they stay away from me forever. It was difficult for me to express that since for so long, all I wanted was their acceptance. But now I recognize that it was nearly impossible. Instead of apologizing, they escalated their actions and were happy with me not speaking to them again. They told me I was worthless as a woman since I couldn't have children, and they wanted nothing to do with me. It was painful to hear them say that, but at least I knew where I stood with them. After that phone call, I did not talk with my parents again, and we were done. When I told Scott about the phone call, he was sympathetic at first, but after a few days I saw that his attitude toward me was shifting. I ignored it at first because I was already going through a difficult time mentally, and I didn't want to accept that my spouse might leave me. So I started pretending that nothing was going on and that everything was fine. Within a few months, he had changed entirely and was constantly chilly to me. I tried everything I could to save our relationship, but nothing worked. 3 months later, he returned home with the divorce papers and announced that he was done with me. I couldn't say I was startled, but I did try to reason with him. I told him we could always try for a kid later, but he stated he had a lot of reasons to leave and didn't want to talk about it. He wanted it to end as quickly as possible because it was difficult for both of us. The divorce took nearly 7 months to finalize, and they were the most difficult months of my life. I was absolutely alone, and I had broken down. To make matters worse, a few weeks after he informed me that he wanted a divorce and had moved out, I learned from a few relatives that Scott was supposedly living with my parents. I knew talking to them wouldn't help, so I decided to speak with my in-laws about it. It was an unpleasant chat, but they informed me that my parents had been in contact with Scott for several months. I suppose they had been brainwashing him into leaving me, which is why Scott decided to leave, even though my in-laws thought it was a bad idea. He had argued with them and stopped speaking to them. I'm not sure what they told Scott, but my in-laws informed me that Scott implied my parents had said he deserved better. So I'm still not sure what they told him, but I think they were just desperate to have a son in any way possible. Since I was no longer speaking to them and they couldn't hope for a grandchild from me, they quickly decided to take Scott under their wing and get him to leave me. My divorce left me extremely damaged, and it took me several months to get back on my feet, but I did it. Since then, I have not looked back and have done everything in my ability to forget the past and go forward. After my divorce, I moved to the suburbs. I started a new job, changed my appearance, and blocked my parents and Scott on social media. I also told all of my former friends and relatives that I never wanted to hear anything about them again, and I didn't want them to know anything about me. Everyone respected it. For the past 3 years I've been in treatment and doing well. The only thing that bothered me was the absence of a baby. I still desired a child despite the fact that I no longer had a husband or parents. I felt like I was ready to become a mother. Last year, I began IVF procedures and became pregnant with the help of an anonymous donor. 4 months later, I gave birth to my beautiful girl. Life has been very good since she was born, and I'm very pleased. 4 days ago, I was walking down the street with her when I ran into my folks and Scott. I was astonished to find them on my street. I believed they were come to visit me, but then I noticed they were stepping out of a residence a few blocks away. When they saw me, I froze. I should have returned home, but I simply couldn't bring myself to do so. They approached me, greeted me, and immediately inquired about the baby, as they were aware that I was infertile. I responded truthfully, and by that point I had comprehended what was going on and began walking back home. But Scott stopped me and said he was delighted he ran into me because he had been thinking a lot about me lately. They had apparently come to visit his aunt, who had recently moved into the neighborhood, and he took bumping into me as a message from the cosmos that he should make things right and give our relationship another opportunity. My parents were also standing there and they demanded that I invite them home to talk about all that has been going on in my life, as they had clearly missed out on a lot. I was shocked that they were even suggesting this, let alone that they expected me to allow them in after everything that had transpired in the past. It took me 3 years to move on from everything, and I'm still in therapy trying to work through my emotions. So I had an outburst. I told them I'd rather have a lot of murderous wild animals in my house than them, since they'd still be better. I told them to quit acting like they cared about me or what was going on in my life, since the only reason they wanted to talk to me now was that I had a baby. My parents wanted to talk to me because they were finally going to have a grandson, and Scott wanted to talk to me because, clearly, he couldn't find anyone else. He assumed that because I had previously been able to conceive, getting pregnant again would be easy, and he could just return to my life. It was sickening that they only regarded me as a supply of babies, not a human person with real emotions. They had all abandoned me when I most needed their emotional support. Even though I had expected this from my parents, who had made it plain throughout my upbringing that they would have chosen a boy, it was nonetheless shocking. They believed that a woman's worth was determined by her ability to be a mother. The big surprise, though, was Scott. He had spent so many years with me and soothed me, but he had still gone along with whatever my parents suggested for some strange reason and abandoned me when I was at my lowest point. I hadn't forgotten anything they'd said to me, so I just repeated everything back to them. Since I was worthless as a woman and Scott deserved better, perhaps they should leave me alone now. I've always been a quiet and shy person, but when they confronted me on the street that day, I yelled at them from the top of my lungs. It was the culmination of 3 years' worth of rage, so it was quite unpleasant. After I finished ranting at them, I dashed back to my house and closed the door as quickly as possible. I was feeling quite bad after that, so I opted not to go to work for a few days and have stayed at home with my baby ever since. Since then, my interactions with my parents and Scott have played over and over in my mind. I honestly had no idea what I was going to do about it until last evening, when I got a call from an unknown number. I'm not sure why, but I decided to answer the phone yesterday. Normally, I don't answer calls from unknown numbers. It was Scott on the other phone, and I could hear my folks whispering in the background. I'm very sure they weren't attempting to be quiet, they just wanted me to know they were there. Anyway, I tried not to be too impacted by it. I just informed him that I did not want him to phone me again because otherwise, I would have to take preventive measures against him, which I did not want to do. I reminded him that the same thing applied to my parents. I didn't want anything to do with them, and the only reason I answered the phone was to inform them that I was done. I had finished 3 years ago and was still clinging to it. But Scott told me to hear him out, and I couldn't bring myself to hang up, so I let him speak. He admitted to me that he, like my parents, had made mistakes, but it was out of disappointment. He mentioned that both my parents and he were looking forward to beginning a family, having a baby and so on. They struggled to accept the fact that I was infertile and hesitant to do IVF until we had saved enough money. They hadn't handled it well, but they wanted another chance to prove they were worthy of being in my life. After a few seconds, I informed him I didn't want any of the rubbish they were selling me. They wouldn't have cared about me if they hadn't seen me carrying a kid that day, and that was the bottom line. That was the truth, and I was sick of them pretending otherwise. I was about to hang up when my parents spoke out from the background, saying that this was exactly the type of behavior that had caused them to cut me off in the first place. Apparently, they thought I was selfish and just concerned with myself when I discovered I was infertile. They said that instead of giving everyone their space, I constantly forced my presence on them and tried to get them to comfort me and pay attention to me, despite the fact that they were dealing with the news themselves. That, they explained, was why everyone had pushed me away, leaving me with no one to turn to. I didn't continue the conversation after that. I simply hung up. I know they were just attempting to dupe me, but I can't help but question myself now. So for my own peace of mind, I need to ask, am I to blame since I sought reassurance after learning that I was infertile? Edit, first and foremost, many people questioned why my parents had not tried for another child after I was born, especially because they desired a boy so much. My mother experienced a lot of issues with her first pregnancy, so the doctors advised her to wait a few years before trying again. But even when my mother had me, she was in her mid-30s. Waiting a few more years would have put my mother in her late 30s, making the pregnancy considerably riskier. My mother had a tough time conceiving me, just as I had battled and eventually discovered I was infertile. The only difference was that while she was struggling, her mother-in-law was rude to her. But this time, it was my own mother who couldn't stop thinking about how I felt. Anyway, that was the reason they couldn't have another kid and were left with only me, a girl. I'm not sure what kind of relationship Scott had with his parents, but from what I saw, they seemed to get along nicely. As of now, I'm not sure if they've been able to reconcile following their recent fallout, because I haven't contacted his parents and, obviously, haven't spoken with Scott about it. Scott is an only kid, so he didn't face any competition. When I visited his parents, I could tell they loved him and had treated him well since boyhood. So I'm not sure why he became so attached to my parents. At least with my parents, I knew they wanted a son, which explains why they started treating Scott that way. But with Scott, I'm not sure what went wrong. I've spent the last 3 years trying to forget about everything, so I hadn't given it any attention or questioned it. But now that you've brought it up, I feel compelled to speak with my ex-in-laws to get to the bottom of it, if only for my own curiosity. Anyway, I hope this answers any questions. Update 1. I decided to speak with my ex-in-laws to find out why Scott has been acting the way he has. To be honest, I couldn't think of a single reason why he needed to go visit his aunt with my parents. It was simply bizarre. I already knew it wasn't my fault. They had deserted me when I needed them because they are bad people, and I knew they were only attempting to gaslight me. I just wanted reassurance and didn't want to bother my friends with it because it was too personal, so I shared it here. So, thank you to everyone who informed me that I wasn't the terrible guy here. It was weird reaching out to them after 3 years of no communication, especially because the last time I spoke with them was around the time of the divorce. Fortunately, they were pleased to hear from me. After some small conversation, I came right to the issue and inquired why Scott was so close to my parents, and if they had contacted him. They told me that a few months after their last battle, they had reconciled with Scott and were now in contact with him. However, he had kept in touch with my parents. They clarified that Scott was adored as a youngster, so he wasn't attempting to replace his parents with mine. However, my parents had been suspicious since the start of our relationship. Even when we were dating, they attempted to persuade him to join them. Scott had informed his parents that my parents would periodically invite him to supper, even when I was busy, and that he would accompany them alone. He thought this was something to brag about because he believed he had impressed my parents simply by being himself, which was partially correct. Being a guy was enough to impress them. They had already spent a lot of one-on-one time together without my knowledge, and Scott had begun to look up to them as parental figures, despite the fact that he had his own parents who he respected. It was very complicated. On top of that, my parents were continually showering him with expensive presents and writing him checks. That was the money Scott offered to use for IVF while we were together, but I assumed he was joking because we didn't have that much money. I never wanted him to do anything dirty for money, and he didn't want to tell me that he had gotten a large sum of money from my parents since it would have forced him to reveal the nature of his relationship with them. Even after that, I declined to go with IVF because I did not believe he had the funds and I wanted to save. My parents used that to persuade him to oppose me, claiming he deserved better, someone who believed in him. Within a few months, they were able to brainwash him, and he eventually left me. My ex-in-laws apologized to me, but said that while they disagreed with Scott's relationship with my parents, he was their only son, and they couldn't cut him off either. I don't blame them, they owe me nothing, and they were only being helpful by speaking the truth. Now that I know the reality, I see no need to entertain any of them if they contact me. They're all horrible people that don't deserve my attention. Update 2. I finally decided to return to work after nearly 2 weeks off. Fortunately, I have plenty of maternity time left because I did not take the entire 6 months off in one go, and my company's policy is flexible. While I was at work, just my daughter and her babysitter remained at home. I trust the nanny totally because she has excellent recommendations and I know her personally. She's an excellent woman. She called me about halfway through the workday. She quickly informed me that she had moved my kid to her own home since she was unsure whether staying at my place was safe given my ex-husband's conduct. I consented and let her take my daughter home, guaranteeing their safety, and then contacted the cops as I drove home. On the phone, she told me that Scott had been outside for a few minutes, yelling for me to come out. When he learned I wasn't home, he attempted to kick down the door. He was cursing loudly and my daughter was sobbing, so my nanny called me right away so I could notify the police. She exited through the back door and strolled to her home via the backyard gate, as she lived only a few minutes away. That way, my baby could be safe while I dealt with my ex-husband and the cops. To be honest, compliments to her. Her primary goal was my child's safety and well-being, which was appropriate. When I got home, the cops had already arrived, and it was clear Scott had been drinking. It seemed strange because it was only around midday, yet there he was, inebriated. I decided to file charges against him because he had really ticked me off and I wanted him out of my life. This also offered me the opportunity to get a restraining order against him, since he was plainly losing control. The authorities took him away, and a few minutes later, my nanny returned with my daughter. I gave her the rest of the day off because I planned to stay at home with my child. I'll probably have to take a few more days off from work, but I'm not complaining because I get to spend more time with my favorite person. Update 3. It's been a few weeks since my previous post. I've been busy caring for my baby and decided to embark on a new project, which has been exciting. Regarding the situation between my parents and Scott, I was able to obtain a restraining order against him. Fortunately, It wasn't too difficult because I had surveillance tape from the day he showed up intoxicated and started throwing a fuss when he learned I wasn't home. I suppose my parents looked at his condition and decided not to bother me anymore, so they've been staying away. My ex-in-laws informed me that, following what happened, they have decided to cut relations with Scott as well. Apparently, he's having trouble locating other ladies, despite his desire to start a family. He can't do it without a partner, and he dislikes the thought of adopting, which may explain why he acted out the other day. But it doesn't mean I have to forgive him, especially given everything he's put me through. My parents are still attempting to badmouth me to my relatives, which is unfortunate because it isn't working. Everyone knows they did the worst thing to me, and now they're pretending they're the victims. That's not how it works, and they're finding out the hard way. I'm delighted they won't have any relationship with their grandchild. I won't allow it. My kid and I will have a lovely life together without anyone troubling us, and I'm determined to be a far better parent than the ones I had as an example.